back in the year 2000 that Stuart and Mary Manley, owners of the Barter Used Bookstore in Northumberland, England, unfolded a bright red poster folded at the bottom of a box of books. At the top of the poster was the crown of King George VI, and below the crown were the words, "Keep calm and carry on." A bit of sleuthing revealed that the poster was created in 1939 by the British Ministry of Information prior to the Blitz, when for 9 months the German planes bombed British cities every night. British citizens were terrified. They hid in their basements and subway stations. There were explosions and fires. Devastation and death were a daily nightmare. It was assumed that the Blitz would be followed by a German invasion. And so in preparation for that eventuality, 2.5 million copies of the bright red poster printed on the front of your bulletin this morning were printed. But then they were to be posted and distributed only once that invasion began. But that invasion did not materialize, and so those posters were never distributed. Instead, they were recycled in order to ease the war effort's paper shortage. Only a handful of the Keep Calm and Carry On posters remained, one of which the Manleys found at the bottom of a box of books 6 decades later. They framed it and put it in the shop window, and its message resonated with the stresses and fears of our modern day. And the rest is history. The now iconic image has become ubiquitous, morphing into everything from keep calm and paint your nails to keep calm and drink tequila. Keep calm. If only it was as easy as a sip of tequila. We have in the text that Mark read earlier for us what seems Jesus' keep calm and carry on moment. And I would imagine that his disciples' question is the same as ours. Keep calm? Are you kidding me? Jesus has been preaching for a full day. It is now evening and he is done. He is finished. He is exhausted. Let's go to the other side, he says. He's dog-tired, and so the disciples settle him on a cushion at the back of the boat and set sail on what should have been a fairly routine trip to the other side. After all, these were professional fishermen. They'd grown up on this big sea. They knew its temperaments, but this crossing would be far from routine. The fierce windstorm tears across the sea and across their boat. Enormous waves toss the boat like a bathtub toy, and they are experienced enough to know that they were not experienced enough for this particular storm. Understandably, they're terrified. Meanwhile, Jesus remains nearly comatose on a cushion at the back of the boat, oblivious. Which no doubt irritates them. It would irritate me too. If they are all going to die, Jesus ought to at least be awake to share the experience. And so they roused him, screaming, no doubt, "Rabbi, we are going under. Do you not care?" Who of us has not prayed that same prayer? I sure have, as recently as this week. I worry, I get panicky, and perhaps you from time to time do as well. God, this is awful. Don't you care? It is an accusatory, frustrated prayer when I pray it. You were supposed to be helping me here, Lord. Have you drifted off to sleep again, lounging in Maui with a Mai Tai? The disciples utter the hurt and exasperation felt by all of us from time to time in the midst of our many worrisome storms. Rabbi, don't you care? Have you picked up the paper lately or turned on the news? Don't you care? Diagnosis, cancer, don't you care? Job worries, relationships wobbly, you name the storm. Jesus, don't you care? Don't you care? Jesus wakes from his sleep, and his stunned disciples watch as he muzzles the wind. And then he speaks to the sea, and perhaps as well to the storm raging in his disciples' hearts. Peace, be still. And by his word, the text tells us, the wind stops. The roiling sea stills. The disciples' panic shrivels. And then Jesus turns to them. Tell me why you are afraid. After all we have been through together, after all you have seen and heard, have you still no faith? The early church loved this story, as I do, and I'm sure you do as well. One of the earliest images of the Christian church is a ship heading into the storm. After worship, check out the image of the ship. It's at 9 o'clock in our Wilshire window. That ship has long been the image of the church and of this particular story. The early church knew what it meant to be a little boat in a raging sea. They were tiny, vulnerable, tormented, persecuted, even martyred. And it is little wonder the early church loved this story of the disciples in the boat and Jesus calming the storm. It was a reminder that they were not alone. That they had each other and they had Jesus, who was very much in that boat with them. Jesus, who would be trustworthy in the midst of even the most violent of storms. As much as I love this little story, I also struggle with it. Perhaps you do as well. The struggle is not so much the question of how such a thing could happen. Rather, the struggle is with what the story seems to be saying. First is Jesus' question, why are you afraid? For on the surface, the answer to Jesus' question is really very obvious. Drowning was not on the disciples' agenda that night, and that is why they were afraid. Note that Jesus is not telling them here to have no fear, or that there is nothing to be afraid of. Rather, he is asking them to examine their fears and the power that they were giving over to those fears. His concern is that they let their fears run away with them to the point of panic, that they had forgotten the anchor of their faith. Jan Richardson says of the disciples, they were right to feel afraid. Storms are scary. Yet their perception that reality was defined solely by the storm only increased their experience of being overwhelmed. The presence of the storm was not the whole truth of their situation. There was a sleeping Savior in the stern. The British Navy has an interesting custom. If there's a sudden disaster aboard the ship, the still is blown. Now, this particular still is not a contraption for making whiskey. Rather, it is a whistle that calls the crew to a moment of silence in the midst of the crisis. When the still is blown, the sailors know that it means, be still. Stop for a moment and think. Prepare to do the wise thing, not the panicked thing. In other words, keep calm and carry on. Apparently that still whistle calling for a moment of calm has helped avert many a catastrophe by preventing the scatterbrained chaos that often accompanies panic. Perhaps in the midst of our storms, we would be wise to blow the still whistle in our own souls. Wise to take a moment, no matter the crisis, to remember that we are not alone, and that the storm is only part of the truth, that Jesus is in the boat. St. Augustine had this to say about those times we find ourselves in the storm, overwhelmed by fear, like the disciples. He said, Christ is asleep in you. What do I mean? I mean you have forgotten his presence. Rouse him, then remember him. Let him keep watch within you. Pay heed to him. Again, the storm is not the whole truth. You are never alone. All will be well. Or will it? That is my next struggle with the storm story. I want all storms to have happy endings, but not all storms do. Jesus seems to still some storms, but not every one of them. I am sure that there are many, Lord, do you not care that we perish? Prayers spoken when a loved one slips away. A job vanishes, a relationship crumbles. All storms do not come with fairy tale endings. If only happily ever after was Jesus' promise in every storm, Jesus would have many more followers than he does. But as much as we would prefer to reduce the story to an assurance that nothing bad will ever happen to us, we know that that is not reality. Not every storm settles into a placid pond. Later on in the gospel, Jesus' own storm is not calmed. His own frightened prayer, 3 times no less in the garden, let this cup pass from me, did not go his way. Happily ever after endings are not the promise of this story. Rather, the promise is that no matter the trial, we are never alone in it. We have strength and a resource in Jesus no matter the storm, even the storm called death. As our Presbyterian brief statement of faith puts it, in life as well as in death, we belong to God. Therefore, all shall be well. Finally, it is Jesus' last question of his disciples that troubles me. After all we've been through together, after all you've seen and heard, he says, you still have no faith. It troubles me because it exposes my own failure to remember God's track record in my own life. Each of us carries sufferings and sorrows we remember all too well, but each of us also has a litany of God's faithfulness. Call to mind your own story. The moments of grace when you most needed or most or least expected it. The mystery of things working out for good when they seemed so bad. Part of our work and our wisdom when the storms rage is to remember that God has seen us through before, time after time after time. As with many things, we are mindful only in retrospect that God, in whatever ways, was in it with us and saw us through to a better place. The hope is to get better and better at trusting God in the moment, not just in retrospect, months or years down the road. People of God, trouble spares no one. Storms are real. In our world, our nation, in our communities, our homes, our church, our personal storms. And they are understandably frightening. But the truth is this: they are not all there is. They are not the only reality. God is still God, and that is very good news. Ours is to stop, to blow that still whistle, and remember that Jesus is with us. Jesus who comes to us in so many ways, in the still small voice in our prayers, in the guise of a friend, in the form of a supportive community, through the pages of Scripture, through a hymn or a poem, or in that calm knowing deep within that we are not alone. Let us then give thanks as best we can, and then keep calm and carry on. We are in good company.